A radio broadcast described the nation's recovery efforts 19 years after a devastating war. The speaker emphasized the significance of 50 young men preparing for an ultimate challenge, urging citizens to reflect and hope for renewed prosperity. A young man named Raymond Garrity sat in a car with his mother, Ginny, who begged him to reconsider his decision to participate. Raymond insisted it was his decision and that this was the only way forward. His mother struggled with acceptance, her voice breaking as she expressed her inability to comprehend his choice. Raymond arrived at the gathering location carrying a baseball his mother had given him, along with oatmeal chocolate chip cookies. The moment of departure proved emotionally difficult as his mother fought back tears. Raymond assured her the walk would only last a few days and that he would see her soon. With considerable effort, he pulled himself away and joined other participants. Raymond met Peter McVrice, introducing himself with nervous energy. Peter greeted him warmly and asked if he felt ready for the challenge ahead. Raymond admitted to feeling somewhat jumpy, but suggested that might actually be beneficial for what was to come. The major announced the participants' numbers and instructed them to line up in groups of 5. He addressed the gathered men about the significance of their decision to participate in this contest. The major explained that the nation had experienced economic difficulties since the war and that the long walk had inspired a renewed work ethic and productivity. He described each year's demonstration as producing measurable increases in national output. The major presented the long walk as the answer to the nation's problems, emphasizing that the event's broadcast would elevate productivity across all states. He declared that, through their efforts, the country would reclaim its position as the world's #1. The crowd responded with enthusiastic agreement. The major explained the fundamental rules to the gathered participants. They were instructed to maintain a walking speed of 3 miles per hour. Falling below this speed resulted in a warning. 3 warnings meant elimination from the competition. Walking for 1 hour at the required speed would erase 1 warning. Stepping off the pavement resulted in immediate elimination without warning. The goal was simple: be the last person remaining. The major emphasized that anyone could win through persistence and refusal to give up. One participant, Baker from Baton Rouge, stated he was there for financial rewards rather than religious reasons. He pointed out the difficulty of growing up in poverty and explained that money represented something worth pursuing. Raymond disagreed, suggesting that while wealth might be necessary, other matters held greater significance. He believed the system had cornered people into participating by presenting this walk as the sole path to escape their circumstances. Raymond argued that all young men in the country were essentially forced to enter the lottery despite its supposedly voluntary nature. Nobody he knew had ever refused to participate, proving that genuine choice did not exist. Peter challenged this perspective, suggesting that money could indeed be used effectively by the right person. They discussed the nature of desperation and systemic coercion that drove participation in the event. The walkers discussed various hints provided for the long walk. One suggestion was to conserve energy, particularly by recommending against smoking during the event. The participants shared cigarettes and debated the utility of such advice as they began their journey. A young participant named Curly began struggling during the walk's initial stages. His companions, Peter, Raymond, and Arthur, encouraged him to maintain his pace and keep moving forward. The boy screamed in distress, his body failing to keep up with the required speed. Despite their supportive efforts, Curly could not maintain the necessary velocity. The major's announcement confirmed that Curly had received his final warning and was eliminated from competition. The major commemorated Curly's elimination, praising his bravery and suggesting that his sacrifice should be remembered fondly. He noted that many more would fall, though none would match the glory of the first or last to be eliminated. The major encouraged the remaining walkers to continue walking in Curly's honor. Raymond felt increasingly tired as the group continued their march. Peter offered a perspective on the race's most significant psychological challenge, the absence of a finish line. He advised Raymond to focus on surviving individual moments rather than contemplating the entire competition. Peter suggested they concentrate simply on getting through the oppressive heat. The walkers pressed onward through the scorching afternoon. One participant suffered from intestinal distress and was forced to defecate while walking. His companions witnessed the humiliating moment as soldiers maintained watch with their weapons. Arthur joked darkly about the situation while encouraging the afflicted walker to continue moving. The man managed to complete this bodily function in what amounted to the fastest evacuation possible given the circumstances. Arthur reflected on what he termed the three great truths of human existence: good food, sexual satisfaction, and bodily functions. His companions engaged with his philosophical musings. The group moved forward despite exhaustion and the onset of various physical ailments. Talk turned to the possibility of winning the competition and what each walker might wish for upon victory. The walkers discussed their deepest wishes if they emerged victorious. Some entertained fantasies about material pleasures, while others contemplated more meaningful desires. One walker mentioned wanting to escape their current circumstances entirely. They walked through neighborhoods, observing homes and contemplating lives beyond the event. A walker named Rank was struggling to maintain pace and received physical encouragement from his companions. The encouragement came too late as his body failed, and he received warnings. Another walker named Gary Barkovich was blamed for Rank's death in some way, creating tension within the group. Accusations flew as the walkers processed the loss of a companion. The walkers expressed anger and grief over Rank's death, directing their fury at Barkovich. They confronted him about his role in the tragic outcome. Barkovich defended himself, claiming he had not touched Rank and that the young man had come after him. Accusations of murder were leveled at Barkovich, though he maintained his innocence regarding what had transpired. The group continued walking despite their grief and anger. One walker remarked on an omen, a crow that seemed to represent something dark or portentous. Another participant warned his companions about a walker ahead who was experiencing severe digestive distress while attempting to maintain pace. The walkers discussed strategies for managing bodily functions while moving at the required speed. A walker named Olson made derogatory comments about another participant's mother, causing conflict within the group. Another walker, Harkness, expressed disapproval of such language and requested that Olson cease making such statements. Raymond missed his mother intensely, realizing how much he cared for her. He explained to Peter that he had ended a romantic relationship specifically to participate in the walk. The group approached a steep hill where multiple walkers struggled to maintain pace. The soldiers monitoring the event warned them that many would likely perish on this particular terrain. Approximately 28 walkers had died during a similar hill 6 years previously. The atmosphere became increasingly desperate as the walkers pushed upward. Gary taunted the group with dark predictions about their fates. Peter and Raymond encouraged one another to keep moving despite their physical deterioration. Peter reflected on his previous conviction that he would not win the competition. He had always felt something was missing from his character, some internal drive necessary to overcome others in such brutal circumstances. He believed himself capable of outlasting Barkovich at the very least, providing some small consolation. Peter explained to Raymond that the long walk represented survival of determination rather than physical fitness. There existed something in the human brain that separated winners from those who perished. Mothers could lift vehicles to save their children, demonstrating the power of motivation. Peter admitted he did not possess this same driving force, and when exhaustion became too overwhelming, he suspected he would sit down. Peter confirmed that 14 walkers had been eliminated during the previous night. This meant approximately 18 remained in the competition. The odds were improving for the survivors, with each elimination increasing the likelihood of victory for those still standing. Peter reflected on the possibility that, eventually, very few would remain, making success almost statistically possible for anyone. Peter asked if Raymond had walked off all his warnings. Raymond confirmed that he had. Peter mentioned that morning had truly arrived and asked if Raymond would finally reveal his deepest wish. Instead of responding, Raymond criticized their current location, complaining about the prevalence of trees in small towns throughout the landscape. A walker was jolted awake by Gary's sudden outburst, admitting that he had been startled from sleep. Arthur expressed a desire for a foot massage, jokingly suggesting he might grant it to himself if he won. He then reconsidered, stating he actually wanted to travel to the moon on a rocket instead. Various walkers discussed their potential wishes, sharing increasingly elaborate fantasies about what they would request. Olson mentioned that one previous winner had wished for a pet elephant, and organizers had actually provided the animal, complete with a saddle for riding. Raymond was skeptical about such generosity, while other walkers confirmed the story. A different participant expressed interest in wishing for 10 naked women to appear at his convenience, leading to debates about the wisdom and logistics of such a request. Peter revealed that he had changed his wish from a personal one to a systemic one. He now desired that future long walks would have 2 winners instead of 1. This would give future participants hope that their friends might actually survive the ordeal alongside them. The other walkers reacted with mixed responses to this selfless wish. Gum continued to hold significance for one walker who believed its persistence was connected to his own survival in the competition. The walkers began expressing rebellious sentiments about their situation. They cursed the long walk, the major, and the soldiers overseeing the event. Rain began falling as they continued their march through the landscape. The atmosphere shifted as they grew increasingly defiant about their circumstances. The walkers continued their expressions of rebellion, unified in their frustration despite knowing that such words could be dangerous. Thunder rumbled in the distance as the weather deteriorated. Peter asked Raymond if he wanted to rest, while Raymond showed no interest in sleep. The group maintained forward movement despite fatigue and emotional distress. Peter and Raymond discussed which participant had most recently completed their period of warnings and achieved a clean slate. The conversation revealed tension between maintaining hope and confronting reality. They continued walking through the rugged terrain, pushing onward despite overwhelming physical and mental exhaustion. Raymond desperately explained his true motivation to Peter. He intended to win so he could obtain a rifle as his prize. Once victorious, he could use this weapon to kill the major, who was responsible for creating and perpetuating the long walk system. Peter expressed horror at this revelation, questioning whether Raymond truly intended to commit such an act. Raymond elaborated on his plan, explaining that wishing for the carbine would satisfy the requirements of his prize. The major was the actual architect of this system of death and control. His father had been a good man who defied the state by teaching forbidden ideas. This was Raymond's opportunity to continue his father's work by eliminating the head of the oppressive system. Peter argued that this plan would likely result in Raymond's death, even if he succeeded in shooting the major. Peter challenged Raymond about whether he truly possessed the capacity to kill another human being. He suggested that only certain types of people could murder without losing their capacity to perceive beauty in the world. Raymond declared he would become that type of person if necessary. Peter countered that such a transformation would be tragic, suggesting that maintaining one's humanity mattered more than any individual act of rebellion. Arthur called out to another walker, Hank Olson, to get his attention and assess his condition. Hank was becoming delirious, speaking incomprehensibly about carrots and donkeys. Arthur could not determine what was happening to his companion. Hank's mental state was clearly deteriorating as the physical toll of the walk became increasingly severe. Hank received warnings from the soldiers monitoring the event as his condition worsened. He became incoherent, speaking about gardens full of weeds. Arthur desperately tried to encourage him to keep walking, while Peter and Raymond urged him to maintain pace. The situation became critical as Hank appeared to be dying while still walking. Hank was fatally shot by the soldiers when he finally fell below the required pace. Arthur watched helplessly as his friend was executed. Peter held Arthur back as he attempted to rush to Hank's body. The remaining walkers were forced to continue their journey, leaving their fallen companion behind. Arthur suffered emotionally from his inability to save Hank's life. Gary expressed remorse about the death he had caused during the competition. He could not stop replaying the moment in his mind. He wanted absolution from his companions, needing them to confirm that what happened was not his fault. The guilt weighed heavily upon him as he processed his role in another walker's death. Gary wanted to be part of Peter's plan regarding wishes and prizes. He offered to contribute money to Peter's mother if they won. He needed companionship and support from people he considered his pack or family within the competition. Peter assured Gary that they were friends and that he belonged with them regardless of what had transpired. Raymond reached his breaking point emotionally when he saw his mother in the crowd lining the final stretch of the walk. His mother noticed the deterioration of his feet and body, expressing devastation at his physical condition. Raymond wanted to hug her, but could not stop walking without receiving warnings. He apologized profusely, expressing his deep regret for his situation. Raymond's mother demanded he keep moving to avoid the final warnings and elimination. Raymond struggled with the conflict between his desire to connect with his mother and the need to move forward. Peter explained to Raymond that he needed to distance himself from his emotional connection to his mother if he wanted to survive to the end. Peter shared his own traumatic history with Raymond to provide context for his emotional distance. His parents had died in the war when he was young, and he could not remember anything about them. A drunk uncle had raised him and then died when Peter was only 10. After that, he survived on the streets with other parentless children, living in basements and fields until the state finally caught him. Stebbins experienced a severe nosebleed that would not stop, which appeared to be an internal hemorrhage. Arthur and Raymond remained with him as he continued walking despite his declining condition. Stebbins wished he had ice to place on his nose, remembering his grandmother's remedy for nosebleeds. Raymond assured him they would find ice and help him continue forward. Stebbins said he could no longer walk and wanted to go home. Raymond insisted he push forward for just a little longer, but Stebbins' body was failing. He asked his companions to give something to his grandmother if they survived. He made them promise not to watch the soldiers shoot him at the end. Peter expressed a desire for an orange Julius before the final moments of the competition. He appeared resigned to his approaching death. Stebbins revealed that the major was actually his biological father, making this revelation about his own identity and connection to the system. He explained that his father had many illegitimate children scattered throughout the country. Raymond told Peter that he had never thought deeply about death until he was confronted with it directly during the competition. Once facing the reality of mortality, he had been terrified. However, spending time with the other walkers had changed his perspective. He realized that every human being was guaranteed to die, and if fortunate, one could choose how to spend one's final moments. This realization paradoxically calmed his fear. Peter encouraged Raymond to continue walking forward, stating he would win the competition for his mother. Raymond replied that he was actually there to be with Peter and would walk with him a little longer. Peter, moved by this gesture, agreed to continue despite receiving final warnings. As the final moments approached, soldiers moved into position. The crowd gathered to witness the conclusion of the long walk. Peter received the warnings indicating his imminent elimination. Raymond, moved by solidarity, also slowed his pace to receive warnings alongside Peter. The two friends walked together toward their ending, united in their final moments.